Chemistry Room Fragrances is the perfect addition when elevating the vibe of any space, whether if it's your home, car, or office, and something needs a quick refresh. Our room fragrances provide that beautiful burst of fragrance with just one quick mist. Shop now at www.chemistryroomfragrances.com and be sure to follow us on Instagram at Chemistry Room Fragrances. Chemistry Room Fragrances. Smells so good.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your girl Camille Essick. This is the host. I am the host of the Speaker Podcast, where innovators and creators connect. And y'all, I shouldn't have to introduce my friend, but I do just because he deserves all his flowers. My brother and friend Antwan Aiken is back. He's here to help me close out the month of September of the Speaker Podcast. If you have not ever tuned in to a conversation that I've had with Antwan, just because I think he's probably one of my most returned guests. He now has his own playlist on my YouTube channel, so you can go. I had to give him and Mark and I think someone else, but I had to give him his own playlist on my YouTube channel just because he has so many features, and that's a good thing because Antwan brings value. Before we kick everything off, be sure to go right now and subscribe. I have merch out available the last couple weeks. It's been like a week and a half. Good Black Men officially is on the web. The information is there at GBM Official. Social media is hating on me. They will not allow me to post my link because they say it violates community policy. Why, I don't know, when there's so much other foolishness out here. But every time I put up my web link, Instagram and Facebook block and remove it, which I think is just nuts. So I figured out another way to post it. And it actually says go to gbmofficial.com, and I spelled the words out because I want everybody to go and know that information is there. I am in the process of building a Black directory for Black people, particularly Black men of various industries. So it kind of be like a one-stop shop. We have links for Black therapists. Antwan is going to get, if you're not featured, I think I did. Did I put the Aiken Foundation on there? If not, it will be going up. The next update happens later on this week. A lot of cool things. So go right now to gbmofficial.com and follow us on Instagram at Good Black Men Official. And we have an email address. It is hellogoodblackmen@gmail.com. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at Camille.Essick. I feel like a preacher doing all this plugging. But we're gonna we had to get all that out of the way. Be sure to follow Antwan at AG Aiken on Instagram and the Aiken Foundation. And Antwan, for those that are not familiar with the Aiken Foundation, please let the viewers and listeners know what exactly that is, and then just a little bit about yourself as well.
Okay, well, as always, it's good to be back, Camille. I feel like I'm in church now saying I'm right at home. But my name is Antwan Aiken. By profession, I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and I still operate in that role. I still see clients. I still through therapy. But I'm also an entrepreneur, and I own a few restaurants here in Atlanta, and I also have a nonprofit, the Aiken Foundation, which is centered around making sure that minority communities have capacity. And we do that by giving money. Everybody needs money, so we fundraise money and then we reinvest those monies right back into communities that don't always consistently get the support that they need across the board.
And for those that are not aware, he does an annual gala event. And
Yes.
so I had the honor and privilege of being invited last year. And I was like, okay.
It's going to be bigger and better this year.
I like how y'all carry on. This was cute. Like, it was nice. And I was just like, okay. It was very pretty, very elegant. So yeah, if you get invited, just charge your phone. That's all I gotta say. Charge your phone. It is content worthy. That's all I have to say.
Round two.
Bing. So with that being said, Antwan, we've been having this ongoing conversation about Black men and mental health, and there's so many topics and things. It's just a layered conversation. And I bring you on just because you're one of the easiest people I know to talk to in regards to this topic. One, because of what you do. One of the things, Antwan, I want to get into, I was actually at work, and this is going to lead into some other things we have planned to talk about tonight. But I was at work today, and I was listening to Clubhouse, and a room popped up, and it was talking about, it kind of leads into hushing, but the conversation, the room was talking about did white supremacy enable Jeffrey Dahmer to do what he did to Black and brown people for as long as he did? Because I didn't even realize, and I saw season 1 of the documentary on Netflix, and that alone, I was just like, whoa. But I didn't realize that he had started killing in 1977 all the way to 1991.
Yep.
And I was like, how did this man get away? And when I started hearing like how the police kept like pushing him to the side because, you know, kind of like coddling or ignoring the complaints from his neighbors, because mainly Black, brown, and queer people as far as were his targets, because he pretty much was targeting people that society, air quotes, would not miss, which I thought was absolutely sick. But just how the handling and treatment of the victims throughout the span and even afterwards. So can you kind of touch on how, as far as within the world of criminal justice, because we see Black men, Antwan, that get these labels as monsters, terrorists, aggressive, but yet this man was a serial killer from 1977 to 1991, and the judge in the trial made a comment and said, oh, he reminds me of my grandson, or we hear these terms, oh, he was just having a bad day. Or in like Dylan Roof, he gets taken to Burger King on his way to jail. Like there's a coddling going on, but yet a Black man can just have a cell phone and get shot 55 times. But even when the police entered the apartment of Jeffrey Dahmer, there was no aggressive arrest. Like, can you kind of go there for us, please?
Yes, so I'm glad that you asked me about this. And this is just such a coincidence because I binge watched literally last night. So I got about halfway through. And I think that everything that you're saying is absolutely right. I think that in this country, and this is not new, I think that Black males have always been seen as the underdog in a lot of situations. And I think when you look at things like, when we use words like aggression in one community can be perceived differently than aggression in another community. So I may see myself as being assertive, but another community or another minority group may see me as being aggressive just because I'm being assertive. And I think that that's an experience that Black men and women experience. But in the context of Black men, I think that it's just interesting that certain people will perceive threats differently. But when you look at even statistically who serial killers are, when you look at all of the school shootings that are going on, it's not the people that it's not the people that society represents are such dangerous people. And I think that that is telling.
absolutely agree with you. Antoine had a little technical difficulty over here. You know, you trying to run a show by yourself, things be happening. I'm trying to get things together. But sorry about that, y'all. But yes, no, I totally agree with that. And it's just like the messaging that was put out. Even how there was one case, the 14-year-old boy, when he ran away and um, his neighbor's niece saw him and then brought him back. No, saw him outside and then the
Mhm.
called the police. The police came and then Dahmer came out and pretty much was like, "Oh, he's okay, whatever, whatever." And the police officer just kind of just pushed her to the side, like, whatever. And this boy was nude. He was bleeding from his cavity. And at this time, he was already a registered sex offender. And yet the
Yep.
police officer didn't think to go, this guy, he didn't even run his background. If he had done that, he would have seen this guy was a sex offender. But the fact that he had him and brought him back to Dahmer, and then Dahmer, of course, kills guy, the little boy. But it's just like, if we have a phone and we look suspicious, I've driven down the interstate and I've seen so many times a black man be pulled over and there's 4 cars, 3 cars. Why do you need 3 and 4 cars for one person? But yet it just really put me in another space. And I was like, I need to talk to Antwan about this because I know he probably would have so much to say on this topic.
Well, and think about what it does to our psyche when you use even your branding, "Good Black Men Exist." Think about what it does to a good black man, and I'm just using that for illustration purposes.
Mm,
What does it do to a good black man when they have that experience that's so demoralizing, and they have that experience where they're being assigned labels that may or may not be true labels that they didn't sign up for just
right.
because of how they look and how they present to society? It's not fair. And it creates an environment where we now have to operate society with this constantly at the forefront. It's not something in the back of our mind. We operate society with this disparity at the forefront, and that really can alter how we interact with each other as black men, how we interact with our families, how we define families and friendships. And I always tell my friends and people in my circle that aren't black men that it's just different. And it's not to say that other groups don't deal with certain things. Every group deals with something, but I can only speak for what I'm a part of.
Right,
I'm
right,
a black
right.
man. And I think that we really have to operate society very differently. And you don't even notice it until you're around people that don't have to operate that way.
That's really good. And going into one of our first talking points, just coping with daily life. And that's something I really want us to kind of unpack a little bit more, Antoine, because as a brother, you experience things. I know as a black woman, there's things I experience, and some of our things are the same. But
Right.
then you being a black male, then there's another layer. Just like for me being a black woman, there's another layer. So just
Mhm.
on the day to day, what are some things that men really don't discuss within the male circle that should be discussed, just coping with day-to-day life as a black man?
I think a lot of esteem. I mean, just thinking of myself and even the circles that I have that are with Black men, I think that a lot of us, there's a lot of pressure that we have to show up in society. So we
Mm,
are expected to do a lot of different things for a lot of different people without a lot of resources sometimes. So we're expected to be providers of our families, but then we also know that we overwhelmingly represent the criminal justice system in a lot of instances. We're more likely to be pulled over, more likely to be prosecuted, and then sentenced heavily. So then understanding that, and then also having this responsibility of providing for your family doesn't always match, because now I got a criminal record. There's all of these things that take me out of the household and that decrease my ability to make money for my household. So I think that it's a lot of times things that we don't talk about is the self-esteem, how
mm,
we feel like we're not good enough, how we feel like we don't measure up to our counterparts that look differently than us because they may have more resources or they may have more family support in ways that's beneficial to us. And I think that that's something we don't talk about a lot because it's just not a popular topic. Nobody wants to, I won't say nobody, but overwhelmingly, people are not, the narrative is not Black men have low self esteem or Black men don't feel confident. The narrative is just the opposite. Even when you look at some of the studies that are out right now, even about maternal health, how there's an assumption, and I think you shared this on your platform, that when Black people go to the doctor, that their threshold for pain is higher.
That is so not true.
But that plays into, but when you think about it, we as Black people talk about how strong we are all the time. And that's not something that we just came up with. That's something that was assigned to us. That strength was something that was built because of what we had to
We
go
didn't
through.
ask for it, but we were forced to be strong because of
Yeah,
exactly what we were dealing with emotionally, psychologically, from a social economic standpoint, from a psychological, emotional, spiritual standpoint. So in order for our people to literally evolve and survive generations of trauma, we had to, air quotes, have tough skin. Not that we wanted to,
right,
but we were not even allowed to show emotion or to cry. Hey
right.
boy, what are you crying for? You know, and you even hear with parents, they repeat it to their kids, not realizing that's something generational. Stop crying before I give you something to cry about.
The trauma of it all, that statement in and of itself. But a lot of things, so we don't, there's some things we can blame on other people, and then there's some things that we have to look at within ourselves. And what you just said is one of those things that we have to look in within ourselves, because we control that. We control the fact that when a Black man or Black boy wants to express himself, and he's not given an environment to express himself without being ridiculed or feeling like he's doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree with that. Um, and I want to kind of talk about more about the esteem of a Black man, because it's like seen but still hushed. There's like a hushing going on, and it's like Black men can be sexually objectified or
Mhm.
wanted for their, air quotes, prowess. But what about the other parts of him, his intelligence, or whatever he has to bring to the table, whatever arena that is? So it's, again, historically, you just want the physical part of him, but then you want to shut down the emotional part of him.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of things that perpetuate that. Even when you look at media,
Mm-hmm.
media will perpetuate that. When you look at how other groups perceive a Black male, especially even if we're talking about sexual objectification, that there's
The gray jogger challenge.
right, right. There's an immediate assumption that has nothing to do with how smart he is, how successful he is, how critical of a thinker he is. There's an immediate assumption that's based just on how he presents physically. And if that message is constantly pushed out, it's almost like, for example, you'll have a young Black boy that may be very athletic, and they're pushed in one direction of athleticism, so maybe basketball, but then there's so many other sports that they may also be good at, but that's not where they're pushed at. So it's almost like you get kind of in this pigeonhole where, okay, you are good at this, so that means that this is your path. We're not going to let you explore your path. Your path has already been decided for you.
Yeah. So, and in that, as far as the intellectual point of it, A Different World just did their 30-year anniversary, and they
Yes.
did like a marathon on TV1. But I have a Fire Stick, so I can go watch the episodes anytime I want. But as a teenager, my childhood crush was Dwayne Wayne because he was cute. But I loved Dwayne not only because he was cute, but he was really smart.
Yes.
And I love the fact that this was a Black man. He was an engineering major, and he was really good at math and science. And we don't realize the images that we see in media as kids, how it really imprints on us. So when that show came out, I was really, really, I was a child. I was so young.
Mm-hmm.
But growing up throughout life, I noticed all the boys that I liked or had crushes on, they were all nerds. Like they were cute, but they were smart.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got to college, I'm not going to say his name, but there was this one guy who was an alpha. He was so cute. And one day he was sitting in the KUC and he was working on his physics homework, physics. And he was sitting like right there. And I was sitting like here. And I was just like, and I was just so enamored because this really handsome black guy was killing. He was like, man, I got an A on my test. And I was so excited, but I was just, I don't know. It's just intellect. I think that is so dope. And I don't think people realize like the mind is such a beautiful. There was a movie called The Beautiful Mind. It's such a beautiful thing, and when you wrap that in melanin, I'm like, what? It is.
And imagine, like, me and you both know black males that represent exactly what you just described, but
Yeah,
how often is that narrative put out there?
right.
When you're watching, you know, networks, and when you're watching media and all of the things that really inform how some people think, that image is not put out there about black men. That is not the
Right.
image that's put out. That's not the It's not the popular thing. And I
Yeah,
know in my circle, there's a lot of people that represent exactly what you just described. But for somebody that isn't in my circle and that doesn't look like me, they're not going to see enough of that consistently. And they're going to think that the world is one way and that the black men in the world represent one thing.
I
They're not
think it also. Yeah, and I agree with you, Antoine. I think it also ties into what sells as far
right.
as social media because now we're in an age of the algorithm and numbers, and that's not a selling point. But yet the gray jogger challenge is, and I and I say that jokingly but seriously because I'm at a point now, just in my life with just my maturation that when I see that on social media and it's just, the lip bite and you doing all like this, okay, I scroll because I'm just like that, or you want to stand to
Right.
make sure your print is popping. Like, bruh, that's all you have to offer. I care less,
Right.
but yeah, I see there's a guy, Sylvester McNutt. He's like an author slash poet, and he always has these profound statements. And I find myself reading posts like that more often because it's making me think or it's challenging me, my personal self, my personal being on a daily basis, or where are you with your spiritual life? Are you really serious about that? It's just what I find more intriguing now than 10, 15 years ago, very different. And so what grabs me as far as what's important as far as the components of a black man, it's not popular, but I think it's much more important that what we see is clickbait on social media.
I completely agree. I completely agree.
Yes. And so then my next talking point, Antoine, you know, um, you're a professor in the collegiate space. Is this your second year or your first full semester at Kennesaw State?
Second semester.
Second semester. So showing up in that space, we kind of talked, I think, a little bit offline as far as how your students reacted when you walked into a classroom. You
Oh,
weren't
yeah.
suited and booted. You just looked like, Joe Schmo. You had on, the merch or whatever. So what has that experience been like showing up, baby face, black male, and you have a baby face, but showing up in this higher academic environment, and what does that experience and interaction like with you and the students?
It's been a very interesting experience. I will say, by and far, I am very well received by my students. So I can't say that I'm not. I'm very well received by my students, but I do feel like there are some initial preconceived notations that exist when I walk in a room. So typically, in any class that I have, there's maybe one person that looks like me.
Wow.
There's one person that looked like me this year, and there was one person that looked like me last semester. So, in terms of representation, there's not a lot of black people, period, but there's definitely not a lot of black males and I'm teaching graduate students, there's not a lot of black males. So, I think that when I walk in, um, students typically will think that I'm another student until they see me walk up front and start like playing with the computer, and then they're like, my name may kind of give it away, but I think that people will expect somebody that's probably a little bit older. I don't wear a suit. I may wear something like this. I'm very true and authentic to myself. Like, I don't try to pretend to be someone that I'm not. So I think that the experience has taught me that myself is enough, that I don't have to conform when I'm in certain environments where I'm the only one or where I'm not well represented. I can still be myself, and that is enough because I said that it's enough. And I think that my former self, and certainly my younger self, I wouldn't have felt that way. I would have felt like I had to walk in with a shirt and tie because who told me that I have to dress like that? Somebody had to tell me that. Somebody had to instill that principle in me, or that I have to walk in and I have to talk a certain way, or that I have to have a briefcase. No, I want a book bag because I want postcards. So I think that it's been a very, very good experience, and I've gotten very good feedback because I have very real conversation. I bring a lot of myself. I talk about being Black every class because it's important. Every single class. In my program, we're training therapists. Therapists work with all kind of people. I talk about my physical identity and how it relates to the work that I do literally every single class. And I challenge my students to always think, but how does this impact people that don't look like you? It's an important conversation to have.
That's really good. I would love, like, if I ever came down and stayed for a length of time just to sit in the back of your classroom.
Come on.
I would love it. Or even just to be a guest. I don't know. But I would just love to be in that space because statistically, Black men have a lower graduation rate than Black women.
Y'all are going to college. Black women are going to college. Like, statistically, y'all are going to college. Y'all are opening businesses. Y'all are really doing a lot of things. And not to say that Black men aren't, but just Black women are doing it in the masses. I've read something that I can't remember. I can't like reference exactly where it was, but I was reading about that, how Black women statistically are just pursuing, especially higher education.
Yeah, that is so true. We're the highest. What was it?
I'm gonna let you try it because I can't.
We are the most educated demographic in the United States.
Oh, yeah. I can see that.
So I think that. Hold on, I'm sorry. Oh, you know how you get that little tickle in your throat? Oh my God!
It don't go away until you get it out.
And I don't want to do that on air. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like, help me, God. But yes, we are the like I just completed my master's last fall here in Charlotte, and I've kind of been eyeballing a doctoral program, but I want it to be right. Y'all know I like school, don't play. But I've been eyeballing some programs, but because that is such a serious thing, I want to make sure I'm in the right space to do it and can give it. Because honestly, the master's program was pretty easy. I kind of sailed through that, but the doctoral program is different. So
right,
but that is, hold on, Lord Jesus. Yeah, I'm sorry. That is something I do want to do, but I lost my thought. See how that cough would just get you off. Okay. But it was something about school. I can't remember. Hopefully it will come back to me. But I know I was going to ask you because since the rate for Black men statistically is lower in the collegiate space, what do you think you could do or institutions should be doing to help Black men? Because they will recruit the mess out of us. But then once we get, and the reason why I'm talking about this is because one of my, I almost said classmate, but we did attend the same college, the late Daryl Freeman. He just passed away probably a couple months ago, but he was our first successful college student. He had a tech company. He sold it for $23 million, doing great things. And then he had an untimely death, mental health
Mm.
related, and he was creating a program at our school, Middleton NC State University. He had pitched the idea to the president, and it was to help more Black men graduate. Long story short, they were like, "No, we're not doing that," and he was like, "I want to do this anyway." So, what do you feel like institutions can do or should be doing to help assist more Black men graduate?
I think that I think HBCUs are doing their part. I didn't go to HBCU, so I can't pretend to know what that experience is like. But based on what I have seen and having friends that have gone to HBCUs and hearing about their experiences, it seems like HBCUs are really doing their part in making sure that Black men are not just getting accepted, but completing that degree. For PWIs, which is most of my experience, I went to
Mine
a
too.
PWI, right, undergrad and grad school, and I teach at a PWI. I think that when you are accepting students, particularly minority students, of course, my Black male is going to be me, but there's other minority groups as well. I think that accepting is only part of the battle. Students come with different needs. And if there's not already a ready made community for that student, that can feel like a very isolating experience. And not everybody is good at thriving in that environment. So I think that a lot of these schools can do a better job of creating a sense of community. Um, Even my own institution, I don't have nothing bad to say about my institution, of course. But I can definitely see how if there's already so few Black men in the program, I can see how it would be beneficial for when that Black male does come into the program, connecting them with a Black faculty member. Doesn't have to be a male, but just connecting them with the faculty member that look like them. That makes a difference.
Like
Like
a mentor
representation
program.
matters. When
Do
people
you
are
think that's something the Aiken Foundation would want to start? Maybe like a mentor mentee program for Black males in educational institutions.
Yes, and it's funny you say that because so we have the Aiken Foundation Student Access Fund, which is our scholarship fund. Every time we give somebody a scholarship, and we just gave Morehouse College a scholarship, we have a scholarship for HR credential that we're about to announce that we just did. Anytime we give somebody a scholarship, we always offer them mentorship, and I do it myself. I think that that is so important to give somebody mentors at an earlier age or give somebody mentors as they go along their educational process. That is important. And that's something that I feel like is our responsibility as Black men. Like we cannot push that responsibility off on anybody else. It's up to us to know that once we've made it and once we've acquired a certain amount of success, that now we got to expose other people to that success, other young Black men behind us, so that they know that this is what you can do. Like I came from an environment similar to you, or I came from an environment comparable to where you came from, and look at what I achieved. So anytime we give a scholarship, we always offer mentorship. We always offer to take that person out to coffee or lunch, and it's totally voluntary. And I'm waiting on somebody to take us up on it because nobody ever takes us up on that part.
I'll take y'all up on it.
And I'm like, we lit, it's not going to be boring, but it's going to be impactful. So, yes, I definitely, mentorship is very important to me.
I love that. So that kind of goes. You unpacked it a little bit as far as the impact of brotherhood for Black men, because we hear terminologies like, "Hey, what's up, bro?" and "bro," but it's like, are you really living up to that title? Because we throw around words, but are you really a brother? Are you really my bro, or is it just a common term? But how impactful is true brotherhood for brothers? Like, really?
I think it's extremely impactful. I mean, I have a true brotherhood in my life, and I couldn't imagine not having that. So I wouldn't even know how that experience is for people that don't. I think that one of the keys to having a brotherhood is there has to be vulnerability. And me and you have talked about that on this platform, that vulnerability is not always an area that Black men are comfortable going at because it's not always an area that's been well explored historically. So the idea of six Black men sitting around talking about how they feel and why they feel this way and everything that they've been through is a novelty. That's just not something.
Without judgment and unapologetically, like, can
Yeah.
just put it out there. Because I really think, Antwan, for Black men, and we've discussed this on end and we'll continue to talk about it because it needs to be talked about, but when men express emotion, there's always an attack on orientation, identity, manhood.
Mm-hmm.
You're human. Above gender, if anything, you're human. You have feelings, you have pain, you get sad, you get angry, you feel betrayed, you have joy, happiness, you feel elated. So why can't you express those things? It's always just strong Black man or straight face or boys don't cry or suck it up or it's just like that's just so unhealthy. And my grandmother always said either you're going to implode or explode because it has to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It has to go somewhere.
I agree. And I think that creating those brotherhood circles, I think, again, I think we own that responsibility. And I think that when we have it, I think that there's a different outcome that can be made when that truly does exist. And I think that that is something I'm proud to say that it is something that I am seeing change in my lifehood.
Yeah.
Or in my lifetime. And it makes me feel so old saying that. But from when I first, I've been a therapist for several years now. I started practicing in 2014 or 15. I was fully licensed to practice in 2017. So not a long time, but not a short time. And how Black men would show up when I first started compared to how Black men show up now, I see a difference. I think the conversations are different. I think COVID has taught us that we really have to depend on the people around us. We can't always depend on government. Like the
No, I
government
think the
has
breaking
shown us.
point was the George Floyd situation
Oh
because
yeah.
we were closed in COVID, the quarantine. Not that any of those other murders impacted our community, but
The
because we're in a
timing.
space where we're forced to watch it.
Right.
You couldn't turn it off because you're at home, you're quarantined, and it was right there. I think that was really the straw that broke the camel's back within our community. Go, okay, look, we cannot keep it. This is enough.
I agree. I think it forced us to have action at a time in our life where we didn't have a lot of control over stuff. Things were closed. We couldn't break into them. So stuff was already closed. Cities were shut down. So we didn't have control over a big portion of our life, but we had control over how we felt about what we saw that happen and how we felt like that situation should be remedied.
Yeah, and I think too with Mr. Floyd's murder, because prior to that, with Trayvon Martin, we didn't see the actual murder,
Right.
but we just had the details. Tamir Rice, even in high school, Sean Bell, Alton Sterling, I think was the first one the I Can't Breathe, Michael Brown. But because we had, 8 minutes and 29 seconds, 45 seconds, and literally watched this man take his last breath. We watched him cry out for his mother. We watched him defecate on himself because of the body shutting down from a medical, physical standpoint, and seeing this officer with his knee on this man's neck and this other man just holding him down and really processing that and that anger and seeing that this was somebody's father, this was somebody's son, this was someone's nephew. The conversation had to be had because that could have been any one of us, even with Breonna Taylor, her situation. Yeah. And I think that just ignited within our community another level of I'm over it.
I completely agree. And what I would like to see happen with all of that is that brotherhood is increased.
Yeah.
I would love to see that because there's a common denominator in most of these situations. Breonna Taylor is the exception, Sandra Bland, and a few others, of course, that we never hear about. But overwhelmingly, what we see is that this happens to Black men. And I would like to see that brotherhood come together and advocate for a cause. I don't know if that's happened since George Floyd. I mean, I think it's happened in some aspects, and I can see a difference in how me and my circle have conversations, but I don't know if that's widespread.
I because I'm not a man, I can agree with that. But I know for me within my sister circle, we do
Sister
check
circle.
like, hey, sister circle.
I like
And
that.
we even have a name, Melanated Millionaires. That's the name of our text thread. You know the ladies, you know who I'm referring to. Hey, ladies.
I think I got an idea.
Yes, the Melanated Millionaires. That's our text circle, my sister circle, and it's like, hey sis, just checking in. Are you good? Hey boo, what's going on? Like we do that on a regular basis, or we leave each other voice notes, or like today, I did a video message for one of them and sent it like, hey, and just even though we can't talk every day like we used to during the quarantine for hours on end, but we still make a conscious effort to go, hey, or we'll schedule. We haven't done one in a while, but we'll schedule a group FaceTime where we all get on and FaceTime each other and just catch up. And I think doing that is so important because I'm the only one that's single, and without a child, but the rest of them are wives and or moms. And so they also have a level of support with each other because of motherhood. I'm last woman standing. They look like right now, and I'm like, oh, really?
Be like, I'm trying to do it right.
Y'all pray for your girl. It's Lord. I'm like, God, today, Jesus. But you said in your word.
But I think that
throw the word at God because that's what He responds to is His word.
Look, let me remind you of your promise.
Because you said, God. Oh my God! Don't get me cutting up because we're PKs. So when we get together,
Listen, we already know what time it is.
Sidebar. I got to get off topic for a moment. I was thinking right before we had the show. I was like, hold on, people like. I would say 97% of the people in my circle are PKs, preachers, pastors, ministers, first ladies, ministers of music, musicians. I was like, God, what you say?
You attract them?
I was like, all of them. Not all of them, all of them. They're all.
Look, I need some more saved friends in my life. I think I'm the opposite.
I was like,
I detract them.
Yeah, and we're all PKs, which is nuts. Like, I don't know. I was volunteering at the food bank like 3 weeks ago, and one of the guys in there, we were just chatting as we were packing boxes. Somehow we started talking about God, and I said something about being a PK. He was like, "Oh, me too." I was like, "What?"
It's like, you too?
We cannot get away from each other. Like PKs attract. It is so crazy. Like
it's a whole bond. Sometimes a trauma bond.
We need to have a PK national convention. Like
we do. We could split up in the subgroups.
Oh gosh. And I had it bad because of my grandmother, my dad, and my mom. So child. Whole other conversation. If Tyler Perry ever gets a hold of my life and I sold my rights, it would be a whole series on Netflix. I promise.
Tyler Perry, reach out to the Speak Her podcast if you listen.
I would call it The Chronicles of a Church Girl.
Oh, title and all.
Yeah, or Between Sundays or In the Pews.
Trademark.
Exactly. So we're going to get back on topic. Enough of that. But so we're going to switch gears here. You are feeding Atlanta. The Aiken household is providing nourishment to the greater Atlanta metro area.
Yes.
Atlanta, if you're an AT alien, you're going to eat because the Aikens are feeding Atlanta. Like, you got Subways and these restaurants, and now you're about to open up a brunch spot. I cannot wait because breakfast is my favorite meal of the day. I can eat breakfast at any time.
You
But
too.
listen, breakfast is a comfort food. People have to understand that. Okay, breakfast is a comfort food.
It really is.
Antoine, let's talk about you're constantly, or just anyone constantly, I guess me too, taking the plunge and unapologetically you're winning. You're pivoting unapologetically and you're winning. You're
Mm-hmm.
killing it. And I told you before the show, I was like, man, I feel like I'm not doing enough with my life. I mean, I got my little show, my little show, but then I see
We,
it putting up.
we don't like that little word.
You don't like, take the little off of, put some respect on it. But you guys are opening up chains.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about just being pivoting without apology?
I think that exactly what we kind of talked about earlier, that the 33-year-old me is different than the 23-year-old me in terms of how I show up in the world so confident. I
Mm-hmm.
wear my identities as a badge of honor. I don't use it as a source of shame. I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of what I represent. And that creates a lot of resilience in me where I feel like I can do anything that I put my mind to. And I truly believe that. I tell myself that every day that, what I know the promises that I've been given, that's the PK in me. There's promises that I've been given since childhood, and I'm seeing the manifestation of those things that I didn't understand when I was a child. And the PK environment that I grew up in didn't always promote big. There was a lot of little, because big was like not humble.
The
So
flesh.
yeah, being big thinking and big dream, all of that was for show. A lot of times is how
Pride
it
come
was
before
perceived.
destruction. I used to hear that so much. Like, I'm just trying to be confident in myself. I'm not trying to be prideful.
Yeah, and I think that that has really been a source for me. Is just having that confidence and feeling like I can do anything that I want to do, and that I'm unapologetic about that. And I think that that has worked for me. I think everybody has their own formula for success, but for me, I see the sky as the limit. There's
Mm-hmm.
ideas that I get all the time, and sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna put a pin in that because I don't fully understand that idea. But 5 years down the line, that idea may come back to me and it may be the perfect time.
Mm-hmm. It is, timing is absolutely everything. I know I've been the queen of pivot, but in doing that, every time I've done so, there's always been another level or a discovery of I didn't know I could do that. Or even
Mhm.
like in this space of podcasting, when I say I'm not a tech person, I'm not.
Mm,
That's not my space. But but I say that. But how will I know? But just because I've never done it doesn't mean I'm not that. And here I
right.
am doing graphic work. I'm production, content, brand development. I've even had people pay me on the side for some consultation. I've had ebooks. So for us to say, well, I'm not a tech person, I'm not this. But when you go back and look historically, as far as our ancestors are concerned, they were engineers, mathematicians. They built the pyramids without machines. So if we're carrying their DNA, how are you to say that's not where you are? But you come from it.
Oh, absolutely. And we come from resiliency a lot of times because of the stuff that we've had to go through and still overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that space, as far as you're showing up, and I made the comment earlier. I mentioned that I really feel like you should document your journey in the space as an entrepreneur in the food and culinary industry, because I feel like other young Black people, particularly Black boys, they need to see. Oh man, so how did he get a Subway? Not one, but two. Now he's opening a brunch spot, and he's teaching at a university. Like all these things, you need to leave some type of documentation or blueprint, because you're inspiring the next great mind, and they can go back and watch it if it's through a podcast or ebook or a YouTube channel, but just to see that journey, because a lot of people on social media just show their arrival, but they're not showing the journey.
Right, and what goes on behind doors. And that's where that vulnerability come in at. You know, when I talked about vulnerability earlier, I didn't talk about it as an expert. I talked
Right.
about it as somebody that still needs to be more vulnerable. So in doing something like what you've told me, other people have told me to do. So I know that it's convicting me. But I also recognize that there's a certain level of vulnerability that comes with that I'm going to have to make sure that I am ready for that level of vulnerability. But to your point, I think that it would be so impactful for people to learn more. And I love, like, through my subways, I get to do so much mentorship because my managers are older than me, so when I show up to Subway and I'm meeting a new employee for the first time, their reaction is always, "You're the owner?" They're shocked. And I like that. And they'll ask questions about what was your process. And I like being able to, if nothing else, be an example for what could be. Even if this isn't your path, and I tell them that all the time, be an example of what you could do because there's nothing, I didn't have access to grand resources. Like,
Yeah, and
I
that's exactly
didn't
what you're saying. Humble beginnings.
yeah, like, just very regular upbringing, a decent foundation. But in terms of resources, which is what's really needed when you're starting these kind of businesses, there was a strategy to my madness to make sure that I had the resources I had to open businesses.
I love that. And even with someone that is older, um, seeing you do it at such a young age, it could spark them to say, "Hey, it's not too late for me," or even to seek out, "Well, if he did that, I still have time. That I can do this." I know you may remember when we were in TMCBA and Mark had us to look up someone in our industry that we admired. So I
Oh,
looked up Gail King, and I didn't realize that she was more mature in her years before she really just took off the way she did. She even had been terminated from a previous station, whatever, and it wasn't until I think she was like 48 years old or older. And now Miss Gill is, I don't want to quote the wrong age, but she's not 48 years old anymore and time has passed. But just to think, like, man, Morgan Freeman, he started acting like at 42, so he was grown when we were little, And so to say, well, oh, I'm too old, I'm past my prime. And I feel like I've adopted this mindset until I take my last breath, I have time. And I'm trying to squeeze it all in because um, why not? Why
yeah.
not?
And I think so often we compare ourselves to other people that don't have our journey. Um, our journey makes sense for us to do and not do certain things at certain time, and other people's journey makes sense for them, and we don't always reconcile the two. So even looking at entrepreneurship, I was trying to do this years before it actually came to pass.
Oh, wow.
Um, and we kept getting kind of turned down at different points.
Yeah.
And it just, once the moment actually came, it made sense because I could say, now I see why this was the best time for me to do this compared to not doing this at another time. So I'm big on things will happen for you when they're meant to happen for you. I don't really like, everybody should set goals for themselves, but I don't like setting goals like I need to do this by the time I'm 35 or I need to do this by the time I'm
See,
40.
that got me in trouble.
It
I
does
lived
get
my
you in
life like
trouble.
that for a while, and when I did that because I was like, "Oh God, you're taking too long," I created Ishmaels in my life or alternatives, and it didn't turn out well because I feel like, "Oh my God, I'm panicking. I'm running out of time." Like that clock. Oh my God, that's like a whole other conversation. But I fell into that for a period of time, and after that last blunder, I was like, you can't live like that. You can't live based on, you can't use other people as your benchmark because their journey is different from yours. And I realized that the direction God had in my life, being married by 30 or 32 and expecting certain things when God I could not have moved as freely as I did if I had have been married with a family, because God was doing my life. Some people's life went like in a straight line, and mine zigged and zagged, and I could not move like that with a family
Right.
obligation. And I think also too, as we start to wrap up, and I'm not knocking it, but if I had done that at 30, I was still figuring me out. I'm still evolving. And can you imagine the roller coaster of anybody in a marriage? You're going through these personal changes with someone else.
Ooh, that's a whole nother podcast.
I'm serious. Can you
Yeah.
imagine like how tumultuous some marriages have been, because you have one person that from age 6 they know they're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, and they love their spouse, but their spouse is going through an identity crisis. This week they're a restaurant owner, and the next week they want to paint. Like, can you imagine that dynamic? And it's like, dude, pick one.
Chaotic. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, and I think that a lot of relationships probably deal with that at different times, and they have to find a way to reconcile those things because those are competing interests. It's like I kind of want and aspire for one thing, you want and aspire for another thing. So how do we reconcile those things so that we can be on the same page?
Exactly. So with that being said, Antwan, before we shut everything down, um, we always do like a little wrap up, and we have our thing where we have our takeaways and nuggets. So before we get things, can you give us maybe like 3 takeaways or nuggets that viewers and listeners can get from this conversation?
I definitely think the first thing is when we talk about representation matters, it does matter. And I think that the first takeaway I would say would be that you can be anything that you want to be. And that goes for Black men and that goes for everybody. I think that's something that we have to really believe, and that's something that we have to really promote in young Black boys at an early age. The second thing I think is the support part, that we really have to create the village that we say that we so desperately need. It's nobody else's responsibility except our responsibility to really create that village and to find that support. And that support needs to have elements of vulnerability in it. I think the last one, which is probably kind of a subset of the second point, is resources. Too often when we get resources, we use those resources kind of for our benefit, or for the benefit of the people around us, but we don't do a good job of reaching back. That's actually one of our taglines, is moving forward, reaching back. Because as we move forward in entrepreneurship, and listen, I want to make a lot of money one day. I'm still a new business owner, so the money is coming. But it's important for me to make sure that I'm not too far forward that I can't reach back and grab people with me, because there wasn't a lot of people that did that for me. But there were some people that either indirectly or by exposure did it for me. And I want to make sure that people behind me have a more direct link than what I feel like I had.
I absolutely love all of that. I cannot wait to have you back sooner than later.
Like 2 weeks, conference coming up.
Oh gosh, see, you spoiler alert. So I was gonna have my subscribers, they're gonna get the panelist list first.
Okay.
But since you put yourself out there, yes, Antwan is one of my panelists for Heart and Soul 2022. So I gave y'all one.
Like you heard it here first.
You got the exclusive here first, people. Okay. It's cool. But yes, we have some amazing things coming up. DJ Spade will be back with us to kick things off. Y'all, if y'all don't know, last year DJ Spade, he brought it. Okay, he left nothing. He left nothing. Jana, she's one of our faithful viewers. What's up, Jana? Thank you for tuning in. What's up, Walter? Okay, TCMBA, we see you. But yeah, so DJ Spade, he let us have it. And it took me back to my undergrad days, strolling on the yard with my sorors, All love and all of that. So I can't imagine what the playlist is going to be like, excuse me, this year. I'm definitely looking forward towards to having that event. If you're not a subscriber, please do so. My subscribers will get that notification first. As far as the panelists, the lineup for Heart and Soul 2022, that is kicking off October the 10th at 7:30. The pre-mixers at 7:30, and the panelists, we go live at 8 o'clock. But catch the pre-party at 7:30. That will be featured here on this platform. And then he'll also be mixing for our intermission as well. So you're going to get not once, but twice on the 1 and 2. So I'm super excited about that. Please go and subscribe right now to thespeakerpodcast.com. That way you can get those notifications. And then follow myself here on Instagram and other platforms at Camille.Essig. And also, Antwan, where can people connect with you through social media, and if they would like to learn more about the Aiken Foundation or to make a donation?
Yes, so we have our website is very simple, www.theaikenfoundation.org, and that is also our social media handles on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter is The Aiken Foundation.
Absolutely love it. So I hope everyone, and I do need to ask you a question offline. It was something we were discussing earlier, but I'll wait until this is over to ask you that question, Antwan. But I do hope everyone got something from this conversation. Like I mentioned at the top of this episode, Antwan now has his own playlist on my YouTube channel. So if you've missed, I'm still trying to pull other interviews and place them there. But I have created a playlist for featuring Antwan Aiken. So if you go right now to Camille Essig Official on YouTube and go through the playlist titles, Antwan Aiken, I think he, Mark Coley, and I think Seal's the Man. If he doesn't have one, his is coming too. But just some of those repeat visitors, they have their own space now. And also, so you can have content. So when you start your YouTube channel, you can link them to me, and then they can see, oh, he's been doing this. And I can say, yes, he can. He has receipts.
Yes.
Yes. So I hope everyone got something from this conversation. This is your girl, Camille Essig, host of the Speaker Podcast, the podcast where innovators and creators connect. Stay tuned for the next episode. That information will be released shortly as we get into Heart and Soul. I hope you guys have a great night. Be blessed, and bye-bye.